When you think of the mid 1990s and the rise of the internet, it changed corporate America as we know it, giving the ability for customers to shop online, but also the ability to chat, the internet, and of course, the big rise of social media. Now, when we fast forward a couple decades, we start looking at artificial intelligence and the rise that we're going to be seeing. And when it comes to investing in our artificial intelligence, it is something that I am really interested in. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the lure of AI and also looking at a billionaire that is investing into AI, while a lot of other individuals are dumping it in its entirety. Now, when you start thinking of AI, the driven software, the systems, it has the capacity to become the most proficient thing that we have ever seen, learning new tasks with no human intervention, which is kind of crazy. The AI revolution added almost $16 trillion to the global economy. That is what is estimated by 2030. So when we think of this, there is one company that has really driven more of the artificial intelligence space, which is Nvidia. When you think right now, the market is estimated at 15.7 trillion. They control over 3 trillion of that, which of course billionaires have taken note. Big investment advisors and investment firms have put a lot in writing on Nvidia. Now, looking at a lot of the billionaire money managers, however, they have chosen to sell Nvidia during June at the end of the quarter, but as required by the Form 13F filings with the SEC, there has been one billionaire that has held on and bought and has been a very avid buyer and a supporter of Nvidia. Now, that billionaire is Ken Fisher, who has been adding his fund stake to Nvidia for the last couple years. Now, when we start thinking about billionaires, of course, they have a lot of money to play with. But when you think of Warren Buffett, when you think of Ken Fisher, when you think of individuals, it's almost like they know something that we don't. When you start looking at $230 billion in assets under the fund management, he grabbed another 2.1 million shares of Nvidia, which again is kind of crazy to think things of that scale. So he doubled his stake in Nvidia when all of these billionaires were exiting, were selling. It's the peak. This is all that we've seen. So the plain as day attraction to Nvidia is really the dominance of the AI GPUs, which of course every computer almost in the United States run on these. When you start looking, Nvidia shipped approximately 98% of all GPUs to data centers in 2022, 2023, and they are expecting the exact same thing in 2024. Think about that for a moment. You have a company like Nvidia that is shipping 98% of all GPUs to data centers. When you think of the future of artificial intelligence and even thinking of bigger picture outside of just Nvidia, all of the companies that are going to be required and that are building literally nuclear reactors to build and have enough power to run artificial intelligence. Do you think it's going to slow down in the future with all of the investments? When you start thinking of Meta, when you start thinking of, some of these massive, huge Microsoft companies, they are going to have such a pivotal part in artificial intelligence. And I always go back to the old saying, you're going to have two companies with artificial intelligence, the one that adapted it and did pretty well, and the companies that didn't adapt very well and no longer exist and are out of business. Because when you think about the domination of 98% of the chips in there, and they have a new architecture chip, a GPU architecture, the Blackwell that is coming. And with this, the excitement, the buzz around it says it's going to be way better than the one that they currently have, known as the Hopper. So even though this is really the hardware is doing a bulk of the majority when we see to Nvidia, they also have a huge CUDA software platform, equally important. This is really the ecosystem of products and services. And they also, it's crazy to think of the profit margins. And we talk about, some places like price gouging. They are charging $30,000 to $40,000 for the current chip, which is a 100 to 300% over computing the AI GPUs and a market premium. So when you think of a premium for the chips that they're producing, they have a premium of 100 to 300% markup. You wonder why the company is a $3 trillion company, and they are even expected within the next 3 to 5 years to be a $5 trillion company and to be the largest company in the United States, which I could see, almost without argument, why it really would happen and how it's going to happen. Now, a lot of people also say that Nvidia is very overvalued, that it's not worth. So when we think again of Ken Fisher piling up on Nvidia, he dumped the rival, or really the top rival that we have for Nvidia, which is AMD or Advanced Micro Devices. He went ahead and sold aggressively that entire stake So essentially, there's going to be a point where it's Nvidia or it's AMD that a lot of people are using. He is choosing to go the Nvidia route, dumping all of the AMD. So when you think of this, he held and sold, which is crazy, about $5.2 billion. Then, of course, he represented about 20% of the stake that he was holding. So again, when you think of people that have been holding Nvidia, really watched it climb up, and over the last 5 years, it's up crazy like 2,400%, which is crazy. But if you think about the runway for artificial intelligence, the way that it's going with those GPUs, the data center, all of the cloud computing, everything else that's going to be reliable, if you are a cutting edge company, if you are a developing company with artificial intelligence, you are going to be using Nvidia chips. There's not really any other way around it, especially with the super high demand when it comes to power to run these chips. If you have a chip that is the most efficient, that is the best one, companies are willing to pay a premium for it, and it has been proven and it has been seen. Now, when you think of Ken Fisher and his team, really very unenthusiastic, and this is quoting the article MSN.com about AMD's evaluation, even though very common for a fasting tech growth stock to really innovate and really come out with some new things. Overall, the forecasted for AMD has been reduced. And of course, looking at the trading consensus, 46 times the expected earnings per share of the EPS. So again, when you think of AMD in correlation to Nvidia, it just seems like AMD is just going to be dominated like we've kind of been seeing, with Nvidia running a big note and really running the big demand when it comes to artificial intelligence. So of course, a lot of people were worried about COVID. When COVID happened in 2020, there was a huge, massive uptick in personal computers. That is where AMD really dominates, is that personal computer space. During the pandemic, people were forced to work from home, seeing a lot more PC sales go through the roof. All of these companies had a demand for remote work. But as life returns to normal, as we're sitting 4 years later, it seems like that PC demand has went down dramatically. Again, when you think of AMD, they were really big into the personal computers, not so much of the corporate side, which makes a very big difference when it comes to what you're holding on to. So guys, me personally, when I start thinking of something like Nvidia and thinking of, the S&P 500, the VOO, the Vanguard S&P 500, that I do hold, I hold it in a multitude of places. And the reason being, when you think of Nvidia, when you think of the development of those processors, they have been the dominating and will continue to. It doesn't mean run out and buy Nvidia. Should you stock up on it right now? Is it going to be a good buy? If you're holding the ETFs that I have in my portfolio, so thinking of the ETFs, I have the VOO, which does contain a big share of Nvidia. I also do have some tech stocks tech ETFs, which of course, like the VUG, that hold a good share of Nvidia. So even though there is a lap, buying Nvidia, holding Nvidia really within that tech market, not only do you hold Nvidia because it is the highest share that we have, or really the $3 trillion company that it is, you're holding it in a weighted average, meaning you're going to hold a lot more Nvidia in those ETFs. Now, again, when it comes to individual stocks like Nvidia, I do not own and I will not own any individual stocks in their entirety. The reason being, I feel like the volatility is there. Somebody could come out with a new product. It could change something. We could see some shift in technology. But overall, when you think of the dominance of this company, it's very clear to see that it is going to be a bet. But independently and owning the share itself, I would not do. Holding it in the ETFs, absolutely 100%. Standing right behind it. All right, guys, so that is going to do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.